was the summer of 2024, and 5 of us, me, my girlfriend Priya, our friends Raj, Mia, and Alex, decided to escape the tourist crowds of Bali for something more off the grid. We were in a small fishing village on the north coast of Lombok, Indonesia, sipping warm bintang beers at a beachside warung when an old fisherman named Pak Slamet approached our table. His skin was like weathered teak, eyes sharp despite the years. He spoke broken English with a gravelly voice. "You want real island? Not in tourist book. Not on Google. Small place. Good fishing. No people. I take you tomorrow. Cheap." We were buzzed and bored of the same Instagram spots. Raj, always the adventurer, asked for details. Pak Slamet just smiled, pointed vaguely northeast across the strait and said, "No name, just island. You see when you go." The next morning we rented a rickety wooden longboat with an outboard motor from him for the day. About $30 total. He gave us a hand-drawn sketch on a napkin, a rough oval shape, a single cove for anchoring, dense jungle interior. No coordinates, no warnings, just be back before dark, tide strong. We laughed it off. Packed coolers, snorkel gear, a tent in case we wanted to stay for sunset photos, and enough water for the day. The sea was flat, turquoise, perfect. It took about 90 minutes to reach it. As we approached, the island looked exactly like the sketch. Tiny, maybe half a kilometer across, ringed by white sand and thick green jungle, no resorts, no boats, no signs of life from the water. We anchored in the shallow cove, waded ashore, and immediately felt the silence. Not peaceful silence. Heavy silence. Like the island was holding its breath. Mia was the first to notice the footprints. Fresh ones, bare human feet, leading from the waterline up into the trees. Not ours. We hadn't even walked there yet. Raj joked it was Pak Slamet checking his secret spot earlier. But the prints were small, child-sized in places, mixed with adult ones. We followed them a little way. They stopped abruptly at the tree line, like whoever made them had vanished into thin air. We set up on the beach anyway, snorkeled the reef, beautiful coral, colorful fish, ate sandwiches, laughed, but the whole time I had this feeling we were being observed. Not paranoia, actual eyes on us from the jungle edge. Every time I looked, nothing. Just leaves moving in the breeze. Around 4 p.m. the sun dipped lower. Shadows stretched long across the sand. That's when we found the fire pit, hidden behind a cluster of palms, blackened stones in a perfect circle, ashes still warm to the touch. Beside it, a half-eaten coconut shell, fresh machete cuts on a fallen palm frond, and a small pile of fish bones picked clean. Someone had been here that morning, maybe that afternoon. Priya wanted to leave. "This place feels wrong," she said, but the boat was still anchored fine, and we figured it was just local fishermen using it as a day spot. We decided to stay for sunset photos. Big mistake. By 6, the light turned golden, then orange, then blood red. No signal on any phone, not even emergency bars. The tide had come in fast, way faster than normal, and our boat was drifting farther offshore. The anchor line had snapped clean. No fraying, just cut. We swam out, retrieved it, re-anchored deeper. By then it was almost dark. We built our own small fire on the beach, roasted marshmallows, tried to shake the unease. That's when the totems appeared. We hadn't noticed them at first. 3 wooden figures, crudely carved from driftwood about waist high, standing in a semicircle just beyond the firelight, facing our tents. They hadn't been there when we set up camp. No footprints leading to them, just suddenly there. faces roughly hacked, with wide, empty eyes. One had what looked like dried blood smeared across the mouth. Alex laughed nervously. Art installation, or locals pranking tourists? But no one else laughed. We zipped into the tents early and around 9, tried to sleep. The jungle was alive, crickets, distant birds, but underneath it all a low rhythmic sound like chanting, soft, far away, then closer, then gone. Around 2 a.m. Priya woke me shaking. Listen. Footsteps on the sand. Slow, circling the tents. Not running, not hurried, just walking. We froze. Flashlight off, breathing shallow. The footsteps stopped right outside our tent, then a soft tapping. Fingernails, wood, against the nylon. Tap, tap, tap. Then silence. We didn't unzip the flap. We didn't dare. Morning came gray and heavy. The totems were gone. No sign they'd ever been there. But our boat was farther out again. Anchor line cut a second time. We swam for it, dragged it back, packed in record time. As we pushed off, Raj spotted something in the tree line. A flash of movement. Pale skin. Human shape. Watching us. Then it melted back into the green. We motored hard back to Lombok. Didn't speak much. When we reached the village, Pak Slamet was waiting on the dock, sitting on an upside-down bucket, smoking a Kretek cigarette. He didn't look surprised to see us early. "You come back," he said, not a question. I asked him straight, "What is that island?" He exhaled smoke, stared at the water. "Long time ago, Japanese make prison there. Wartime, hide prisoners, bad prisoners, ones no one want found. After war, they close camp, say everyone escape, but no boats left, no bodies wash up, just gone." He paused. "Some say they still there. Not people anymore, something else. They watch new boats, make sure no one stay, make sure no one leave with stories." We asked why he sent us to. He shrugged. "You want real island? I give real island." We never went back, never told many people, but sometimes late at night, Priya wakes up whispering she hears tapping on the window. Tap, 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 like fingernails on nylon. And last month, Raj showed me something on his phone. He'd searched satellite view of that stretch of sea, the coordinates we estimated from the napkin sketch. There's nothing there, just open water, no island, no landmass. Google, Apple Maps, every database, blank blue. But when you zoom in close, just for a second, you can almost see the faint outline of an oval shape, like a scar on the ocean. Then it's gone. If you ever hear a fisherman offer you a nameless island, one not on any map, say no, because some places aren't missing from the maps by accident. They're missing on purpose, and whatever lives there doesn't like visitors. It just likes making sure they never really leave. March 2025, and I needed to disappear for a while. Work burnout, a bad breakup, the usual mid-20s spiral. I booked the cheapest flight to the Philippines, then a ferry to a lesser-known island chain in the Sulu Sea. One small island caught my eye on a backpacker forum, Palawan's hidden gem, completely uninhabited. No resorts, no people, just beach, jungle, and silence. Perfect for solo camping. The post had only 3 replies. One said, "Tried it last year. Boat guy warned me not to stay overnight. I did anyway. Wouldn't recommend." No follow-up. The other 2 were just fire emojis. I ignored the red flags. I wanted isolation, real isolation. I hired a local fisherman in El Nido to drop me off. His name was Mang Tony, old, quiet, missing 2 fingers on his left hand. He looked at my backpack, my tent, my 2 days' worth of rice, canned tuna, water purification tablets, and machete, and shook his head slowly. "You sure?" he asked in accented English. "Island no good after dark?" I laughed. Told him I'd survived worse in Southeast Asia. He shrugged, took my money, 5,000 pesos, and said he'd be back at sunrise on the 3rd day. No earlier, no later. Tide too strong. You wait. He dropped me on a crescent beach at 4 in the afternoon. White sand, turquoise shallows, dense green jungle rising straight up behind it. No trash, no footprints, no sign anyone had ever been here. Perfect. I set up camp 50 meters from the waterline. 1-person tent, tarp overhead for rain, small fire pit. Watch the sun sink behind the ridge. Ate cold tuna from the can. Felt the kind of peace you only get when no one knows where you are. Night fell fast. By 7 it was pitch black except for my headlamp and the fire. No moon. Stars thick overhead. I crawled into the tent around 9, zipped the fly, turned off the light, and tried to sleep. Around midnight I woke up. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, circling the tent. Bare feet on sand. Soft crunch. Soft crunch, not animal. Human gait, steady rhythm, coming closer, then moving away, then closer again. I lay frozen, heart slamming against my ribs. Told myself it was a monitor lizard or wind moving branches. But the steps were too even, too purposeful. They stopped right outside the door flap. I held my breath, waited. Nothing, then a low sound, like someone exhaling through their nose. Not quite a sigh, more like acknowledgement. Then the footsteps retreated, faded into the jungle. I didn't sleep after that. At first light, I unzipped the tent. My stomach dropped. My shoes, both pairs, were gone. I'd left them outside the fly to air out. Now nothing. My backpack had been opened, contents rearranged, rice packets stacked neatly in a pyramid, tuna cans in a perfect circle around them. My machete was placed, blade down in the sand, handle pointing toward the tree line like an arrow, and carved into the trunks of the 3 closest palms, fresh cuts, sap still running, were symbols. Crude circles with lines radiating out, like suns, or eyes, or something watching. But the worst part was the sand right outside my tent door. 1 word scratched deep, letters a meter tall. Leave? I stared at it for a long minute. Then I laughed, nervous, shaky. Probably Mang Tony messing with me before he left yesterday, or some local kids who snuck over in a banca boat. I decided to stay, prove to myself I wasn't scared. I spent the day exploring, hiked inland a kilometer, found a freshwater stream, swam in a hidden lagoon. No signs of people, no trash, no trails, just jungle and silence. But the silence felt wrong now, like it was listening back. As dusk fell on the 2nd night, I built the fire bigger, sat with my back to a rock, machete in hand, watched the tree line. Around 8 p.m., the first light appeared, a single torch, orange flame, moving slowly through the jungle, about 200 meters inland. Then another, then 3 more, then dozens. Flickering points of fire weaving between trees, coming closer in a loose arc. No voices, no footsteps I could hear, just the lights, encircling. My phone had 0 signal since the moment I landed. No way to call for help. The boat wouldn't return until tomorrow morning. I killed the fire to stay hidden. Crawled into the tent, zipped it tight, and lay there clutching the machete. The torchlight stopped at the edge of the beach. I could see them through the mesh window, dozens now, stationary like they were waiting. Then one moved forward, slow, deliberate. Stopped 10 meters from my tent. A shadow fell across the nylon. tall, thin, human-shaped. I saw the outline of a spear in its hand. The figure stood there for what felt like hours. Didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. Then it turned and walked back to the others. The torches began to retreat. One by one, they disappeared into the jungle. The beach went dark again. I didn't sleep. I sat up all night listening. At some point, maybe 3 a.m., I heard chanting, low, rhythmic, coming from deep in the trees. Words I didn't understand, rising and falling like waves. Then silence. Dawn came gray and damp. I packed frantically. No shoes, still gone. I walked barefoot to the waterline, waded in up to my waist, scanned the horizon for Tony's boat. Nothing yet. That's when I saw them. On the ridge above the beach, silhouetted against the rising sun, maybe 30 figures, standing motionless, watching me, spears in hand. No clothes I could make out, just dark shapes against the sky. They didn't move, didn't wave, didn't threaten, just stared. I waded deeper, hard in my throat, prayed the tide would bring the boat soon. At 7:30, Tony's longboat appeared around the point. He motored straight in, face grim. Didn't smile, didn't ask how it was. Just helped me throw my gear aboard. As we pulled away, I looked back. The figures were gone, like they'd never been there. On the ride back, Tony spoke only once. "You see them?" I nodded. He stared at the water. "Old tribe? Before Spanish. Before anyone, they keep island clean. No visitors, no pictures, no stories. You lucky." I asked why he dropped me anyway. He shrugged. "You pay? You want a loan? I give a loan." I never posted about it, never told many people. But sometimes I wake up at night hearing that low chanting. Sometimes I check my tent flap, half expecting to see torchlight outside. And once, scrolling satellite view of that island chain, I zoomed in on the spot where I camped. The beach is there. The crescent curve, the lagoon, but in the jungle interior, faint, almost invisible unless you know to look. There are dozens of small clearings arranged in a perfect circle, like they've been keeping watch for centuries. If you ever see an uninhabited island advertised online, one with no Google pins, no reviews, just a fisherman's word, don't go, because some places aren't empty. They're guarded, and the guardians don't ask you to leave twice. They just make sure you never come back. We were only supposed to be gone 2 hours. That's what I keep coming back to. 2 hours. Paddle out, take some photos, paddle back, make breakfast. That was the whole plan. A little adventure before the other tourists woke up. The kind of story you tell at dinner parties. "Oh, we found this secret little island off the coast. You'd never believe it." I keep thinking about that version of the story, the one where we just turned around. My girlfriend Mara had found the island on her 3rd day of obsessive Google Maps zooming. That's her thing on vacation. She calls it finding the secret spots. She found a thermal bath in Budapest that wasn't in any guidebook. She found a restaurant in Lisbon with no sign, no menu, no English, and the best meal I've ever eaten. So when she showed me the satellite image, this little dark smear in the Aegean just east of the peninsula, close enough to see from the water, I didn't argue. We rented the kayaks from a guy named Stavros, who ran a little shack near the harbor. Bright yellow kayaks, slightly scuffed. He handed us life vests without making eye contact and gave us a laminated map of the coastline. Mara pointed to the island, asked him about it. He looked at her for a second. Then he looked at the map. Then he looked back at her. "No island there," he said. She turned the map around to show him. The smudge was right there. You could see it barely, just a dark bump in the blue. He shook his head, handed us our paddles, walked back inside. We laughed about it on the way out. It was maybe 20 minutes of paddling. Easy water, early enough that the surface was almost flat. And then there it was. Not a smudge anymore, but a real thing. Rocky. Maybe 40 meters across, 50 at its widest. A cluster of pale limestone jutting out of the water like a fist. Low tide had pulled back enough that there was a narrow shelf of rock you could beach the kayaks on. We dragged them up, tied them to a little crevice with the bungee cords Stavros had included. I remember thinking that was thoughtful of him, including the cords. The island smelled like brine and something else, something almost mineral, like old pennies. There was a structure on the eastern side, or what was left of one. Stone walls, maybe waist high, enclosing a space the size of a large living room. No roof, no door frame, just the outline of a room that had once existed slowly being erased. Mara went straight for it. She always goes straight for the thing. I followed, slower. And that's when I noticed the chains. There were 4 of them, maybe 5. Set deep into the rock, not into the stone walls, but into the bedrock itself, rusted the color of dried blood. Each one ended in a cuff, or what had been a cuff, corroded into a rough ring. They were short, maybe 2 feet of slack. I pulled on one. It didn't move. "These are old," Mara said. She crouched down, ran her thumb along one of the links. "Really old," I said. She nodded slowly. Neither of us said what we were both thinking. The sky was turning pink. It had been gray when we set out, the way the Aegean gets just before sunrise. This deep purple gray that makes everything look like a dream. Now the east was going pink-orange. We'd been out longer than I'd realized. I looked back at the kayaks. They were gone. Okay, wait, let me be careful here, because this is the part people ask about. Did the bungee cords fail? Did a current take them? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. One moment they were there, bright yellow against the pale rock. And then I looked up from the chains, and they weren't. Mara was already standing, already scanning the water. The kayaks were maybe 30 meters out, drifting slowly east. Not fast, not panicked, just leaving. "We can swim for them," she said. I looked at the water. The color had changed. It wasn't that deep purple anymore. It was darker. And the shelf we'd beached on, it was already half submerged. The tide was coming in. But that's wrong, I thought. We'd paddled out at low tide specifically. We had hours before it came back. Stavros had told us. Or we'd assumed Stavros had told us, or we'd read it somewhere, one of those half-remembered travel blog facts that you take on faith. The water was at my ankles before I finished the thought. We climbed to the highest point on the island, which wasn't high, maybe 1.5 meters above where the water line had been when we arrived. We sat there together, watching the shelf disappear, watching the lower stones of the ruins vanish. The water wasn't violent, it wasn't dramatic, it just rose. Steadily, calmly, like it had done this 1,000 times. Because it had. Mara found the carvings. She'd been running her hands along the interior walls of the structure, looking for handholds, I think, or just needing to do something with her hands. And she stopped, pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight. The carvings were in Greek, ancient Greek, not the kind either of us could read. But below them, and I don't know if these were added later or carved by someone different or what, were drawings. The kind you don't need to read to understand. Figures, upright. Arms out, wrists together, chains, and water. Rising water. rendered in those simple ancient lines. And small, scattered shapes around the figures, irregular, numerous. It took me a second. They weren't shapes. They were people, floating. I want to be really clear about something. What I've told you so far. The kayaks, the chains, the tide. That's the part that scared me. That's the part that made my heart do something wrong in my chest. That made Mara grab my arm hard enough to bruise. But that's not the part that still keeps me up. The water was at our knees. We were standing on the absolute peak of the island, the highest rock, and the water was at our knees and still rising. We'd been yelling for help for 20 minutes. It was early. The mainland was maybe 400 meters away. No one came. And somewhere under us, under the water that was now thigh-high, shockingly cold even in July, somewhere under that water, the chains were still there, bolted into the rock, short enough that you couldn't sit, long enough that you'd stay upright, long enough to feel the water rise. I understood then why the walls were waist-high, why there was no roof, why this structure had been built on an island that didn't exist for most of the day. You didn't need to drown them immediately. You just needed to chain them here and wait. The sea did the rest. Mara was crying. I don't cry. I'm not saying that as a brag, it's just a thing about me. But I was shaking in a way that had nothing to do with the cold water. We were chest deep now. I don't know how many hundreds of people had stood in this exact spot, water rising, nothing to hold on to, nothing to do but wait. I grabbed Mara's hand. She grabbed mine back. "We have to swim," she said. 400 meters? We have to swim. We swam. That's how we survived. I'm not going to pretend there was anything else to it. No boat appeared, no miraculous low tide. We swam 400 meters to the mainland, and I threw up twice when we got to shore, from exhaustion and fear and swallowing too much water. And Mara sat on the rocks next to me and didn't say anything for a long time. By the time we looked back, the island was gone. Just flat water, like it had never been there. Stavros, when we got back, didn't seem surprised to see us. He handed us both towels from a shelf behind the desk, like he'd been expecting us to return wet. He didn't ask where the kayaks were. He told us later he'd call the rental company, that it happened sometimes. The currents were strange near that part of the coast. I asked him about the island, about the carvings. He was quiet for a second. "Old place," he said finally. "Very old. From the Venetians, maybe older." He folded his hands on the counter. "Some islands, they belong to the water. You understand? The water lets you visit, but it always comes back." I thought he was being poetic. I've thought about it almost every day since, and I no longer think that. Here's the thing I can't let go of. The bungee cords. Stavros included them. He handed us those kayaks without making eye contact, refused to acknowledge the island existed, and then included bungee cords, specifically long enough to tie off on a rocky island shore, like he knew we'd need them, like he wanted us to tie the kayaks down, like he knew, or like something he'd absorbed from years on the coastline knew, that what was tied to that island didn't always stay tied, that things left there had a way of becoming untethered. I've looked up the island since. There's no record of it in any tourism database, no mention on any diving or kayaking forum. The satellite image Mara found is still there if you zoom in exactly right, but I've seen other images of the same coordinates, taken at different times of year, and in most of them, there's nothing, just water. I don't know how long we were standing on that rock. It felt like an hour. It might have been less, but I know this. when the water was chest high and still rising, with the ruins dissolved somewhere beneath us and nothing to hold on to. For just a moment, I felt something. Not a current, not debris. Something that moved with intention against my leg. And then gone. I've never told Mara that part. I don't think I'm going to. We only meant to be gone 2 hours. We don't kayak anymore.